Hello and welcome to Find Your Freedom, a podcast dedicated to helping you truly find freedom in all aspects of life. Join your hosts and their expert guests as they share practical tips and strategies for finding more freedom in your life. It's time to take control of your life and create the future you want. Let's find your freedom. Here are your hosts, Lenny the Boss and Omid Rad Investor.
Boom, boom, boom. We are back with another episode of Find Your Freedom. And before we get into this fantastic guest friend we have on today, I just want to ask you a question. Are you in the market for a personal home? Or how about a long-term rental or a short-term rental? Well, if you are, I want you to visit Wealth Builders Mortgage Group, all right, powered by Movement Mortgage, and they will ultimately get you any and everything that you need. Omid, myself, we use them all the time. So we are not just saying it, we actually practicing it. All right. So make sure you contact Wealth Builders Mortgage Group. All right. If you're looking for a property to invest in. All right. Now, let me ask you another question. Let me ask a question to our listeners. So have you ever been interested in owning a franchise or just want to know how they work? Well, today, all right, our guest has over 25 years of experience, and he also have worn many hats, throughout his career thus far. He's also a consultant who guides countless individuals to the path of business ownership. And one thing that I find to be cool is he loves to specialize in turning entrepreneurs into successful business owners. So let's find out more about these franchises. So Mark, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Thanks so much, Lenny and Omid. Yeah, it's great to be here. I appreciate it very much.
Fantastic. So Mark, before we learn more about, franchises, because personally, I know that I'm eager about it. Omid and I was just talking about it before we jumped on with you. Can you just give a little background on yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So about 30 years ago, I was out of school and I was honestly selling group health insurance and sold the policy to a founder of a franchise in Milwaukee. And he and I hit it off and we got along really, really well. And one day he came to me and he said, listen, I'm going to franchise this thing. Do you want to help? And I was like McDonald's franchise? I had no idea what was going on. And he's like, yeah. And so he was a Harvard MBA, brilliant guy, and the most frugal person I've ever met in my life. Like literally would tear Post-it notes in half. Like
Wow.
That's the kind of guy.
Okay.
If he could reuse staples, he probably would. And which taught me a lot about business ownership and the right way to do it. Right. And, I was always, frustrated a little bit, but he was right. Now I think he's right. And what really happened was we had to put together what was called the Uniform Franchise Offering Circular back then. Now it's called the Franchise Disclosure Document. We can go through that in a minute. He wouldn't hire an attorney because it cost too much. So,
okay.
So we wrote it together based on another one, whatever. It wasn't like we were making the thing up, but it's a boilerplate document, so you can just do it that way. But I learned the School of Hard Knocks MBA on franchising that way. And I also helped run the company stores. I sold all the franchises. I helped people find their locations, did the layout and design, did the pre-opening training, did the post-opening support. Wow. I did it all. And that's how I cut my teeth on franchising. And then one thing led to another. We sold a lot of franchises. And he said, listen, I want to put the brakes on and support the people that we sold the franchises to, which is today's biggest buzzword is responsible franchising, which is what you're supposed to do to begin with.
Okay.
We were ahead of our time back then. Just put the brakes on expansion, supported the people we were helping grow. But for me, I was in it to sell franchises, and that's how I was making a bulk of my income. So I said, listen, I am not like the ops guy that you want me to be. So I literally left and helped. I was the second consultant to join a company called Franchoice, and Friend Destiny, the company I'm with, is basically an independent consultant for Franchoice. And that was 24 years ago. And what that allowed me to do is when people came in to look at the franchise that I helped launch, not everyone was a good fit for it. So a lot of them left. And I was so frustrated because I wanted them to be a franchise, but not of what we were doing. Right. So they
So
walked out the door. I had no idea. Go ahead.
can I interrupt you real quickly? Because
Absolutely.
I think your story is super interesting. So I just want to kind of go back a little bit. So you're almost like an apprentice. Like, so you have this MBA guy, this Harvard whiz guy, and so does he essentially approach you and say, "Hey, I want you to be my ops guy. You're gonna implement this idea, and we're gonna share percentages," or is it just like you're a salaried employee? Like, how does that whole discussion work? Because I mean, just walk us through that, because I think that's an interesting story in itself, because I think that's walk away from like your stable job to do something completely different.
Yeah, so I was on a salary, if you can call it that. It was little. And then I got bonused on franchises that I sold, which is typically how it works in development of franchise operations. The sales guys people have a small base, and then they get bonused.
Yep, that's correct.
So walk us through, like, back then, how do you I guess get into the, like, what's the entry point of franchises? So maybe like walk us through that a little bit. Like, how do you become a franchise owner? Like, do I just need good credit? Do I just need money? Like, how does that whole process work?
Do we have to have good looks? Like,
Yeah.
what's the deal?
Sold. No, so the idea there's such a huge, just a cavernous way to understand like the investment level in franchises. There are franchises for $75,000 all in, and there's franchises for $7.5 million all in. It depends on what you're looking at. Anything with a storefront, retail, with fit out and leasehold improvements and utilities and rent and all that stuff obviously has higher startup costs and higher overhead. If you're looking at people in a truck doing home services or anything like that, obviously there's a lower entry point as well as overhead. And then you've also have home services where you're literally contracting out all the labor. And so you're just adding margin to what you're paying them. So there's a huge variety of investment levels. So what we do is we partner with funding sources that all they do is help people fund franchises. Okay. And then we also work with what I call an outsourced CFO to help our candidates look at pro formas, build pro formas, have a complete understanding of all the financials. We actually helped his wife get into a franchise, and they spent like 75 grand. She's doing over $3 million. Wow. So, I mean, you don't have to spend a lot of money to make money in franchising either. So it's not one size fits all. It really depends on what that particular candidate is looking to do.
So Mark, you basically would help me buy a Dunkin' Donuts. Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah. So I have about 250 concepts in my inventory. Okay. And it's interesting. People always either say Jimmy John's, Dunkin' Donuts, Chick-fil-A. It's always food, right? And honestly,
at least I made the cut, man.
Yeah, you did. People just assume franchising is food. And of the 250 concepts I have, about 4 of them are food. Because you know why? To most people, food sucks. I mean, I don't want to be like crass about it, but if you look at the biggest turnover, the biggest failure rate, the biggest money walking out the door, every single thing that can go wrong happens in food. Now, there's a ton of very, very, very successful multi-unit food franchisees. So I'm not like poo-pooing the entire industry, but when you look at it in comparison to other things, there's a whole lot easier things that you can do than food.
Gotcha. All right. So Mark, let me just kind of get we want to walk through this, right? So, all right. So we have, let's call this guy John, right? So we got John who looking to buy in on a franchise, right? and obviously he's going to hire you. You're going to have a book of business. You say over 200, I believe, different franchises that he can choose from. So once he make his choice, right? Like, what are the next steps, of the franchise? Because you mentioned earlier someone put up 75K, and I know that would change according to what you're getting into, but I think we want to know, because the money is gonna be the money, but like, what else? Those other things you need. I think Omi mentioned, is it credit? I mentioned, is it good looks, right? Is it like so? So I guess take us from there. Like,
Yep.
I just chose one, or John just chose one. What's next?
All right, so let's start even further back. So initially, first of all, you said they hire me. They don't hire me because my services are free.
Oh,
So it's because the
all
franchise.
right, Omi, pick a franchise. We got Mark that's gonna sit here. No,
So
I'm just
the
joking.
reason why is that the franchisors pay my fee if you move forward. So
Okay.
there's no cost at all to the people that I work with. So let's say you reach out to me and you say, Mark, I am really done with corporate America or whatever I'm doing. I would like to diversify my portfolio income. I would like to own a franchise. So what I do then is I send you a confidential questionnaire to get a 50,000 foot view of you. Then we do a full 2-hour consultation via Zoom to really dig into the attributes of the business, because that's really what it's all about. If Lenny says Lenny loves golf, so let's open a golf store. Well, Lenny's never going to golf again, right? He's going to be counting golf clubs. And so what we do is we say, let's find something that allows you the financial freedom and the time freedom to play golf whenever you want.
Okay.
Right. So that's the first thing that you need to do. And the second thing you need to have is a very open mind, because I'm going to show you things that you never would have thought of in a million years on your own, because we take the attributes of the business, of that widget. Is it a long sales cycle? It is a short sales cycle. Is it brick and mortar? Is it service? Is it retail? Is it, there's a million things that we talk about. What kind of employees? Do you want employees at all? Do you want them certified at something? Do you want them, professional, whatever it is, right? So we then make a model based on that information. Then I go back to my inventory and I say, okay, which of these franchisors fit the investment level, fit the geographic location of the person, and all of those attributes that they are looking for. So then I pick several companies that make sense, typically around 3, and then I propose those companies on a separate phone call to the candidate and say, this is what matches and this is why. And then we submit to those franchisors, and then I help with a very, very systematic research process and due diligence process. I give all the questions to ask the franchisors. I give questions to ask the franchisees, because you're going to validate with those franchisees that are already doing that business, so you can validate what everyone's saying to you, right?
Yep.
And then help you find, with your funding. I help you do all that until you come to a point where you pick the one that's the best fit.
Okay.
And then you pay the franchise fee, you sign the franchise agreement, you become a franchisee, and then you begin training with that franchisor. And then I really hand you off to them, and they're your go-to then. I check in, obviously, with all my candidates because I want to know how they're doing, but that's basically the whole entire process.
All right, Omi, we got us a Chick-fil-A coming up, buddy.
Yeah. No, you don't. But,
So as far as like
so
emerging,
that's really the process.
yeah, like
Go
emerging
ahead.
businesses. So what is like emerging businesses or franchisees that's like in the next 5 to 10 years are like in demand or in need? Like, because I imagine that's probably like a common question that's asked. And but I'm curious, like, is that, and does that have related to baby boomers at all, or is there anything kind of in association to that?
Yeah, I would say that certainly it's interesting when you say emerging concepts. That's an interesting concept altogether, because people say, I want to have brand awareness and I want everyone to know what it is and everything else, right? Well, if that's the case, you're not going to have any territory because they're all sold, right? So an emerging concept to me is one that's up and coming, that's part of a larger organization that's already been successful at franchising another concept, and maybe they just got sold out. So then what they'll say is, let's rinse and repeat with this new concept. So there's a bunch of territory available. And on the flip of the coin is when you're talking about stuff like, even especially since the pandemic, I used to have to just say, we're going to be recession resistant, right? Now I have to say, we're going to be recession resistant, we're going to be pandemic resistant, and we're going to be Amazon resistant. So those are three very important things to consider, which basically boils down to the safest concepts are going to be essential businesses. Okay. And that can deal with baby boomers, maybe senior care. My wife and I owned 3 territories of a senior care company. We had 250 caregivers running around into people's homes every day with 3 offices, 17 admin people. We did over $4 million a year doing that. And it was a decent sized business in that category. We had a great exit in 2014. So again, I've been a franchisor. I've been a multi-unit franchisee with a great exit. And I've also been a consultant for the last 25 years. So I've been on all 3 legs of this stool to help people identify what great concepts would be appealing to them. So the senior space is great. Pet space, especially since COVID, there's 1 trillion dogs out there that weren't around before COVID. And then all these people are going back to work and they don't know what to do with their dogs during the day, right? And then also anything related to children, whether that's enrichment programs, whether that's sports, whether that's anything, because all the schools' funding have been so stripped that they don't even have gym anymore, right? And so these families are looking for ways to get their kids moving and interested in sports. So that's a huge category that's absolutely fantastic. And when you're talking about my favorite category,
Come on, give it to us.
Is those dirty jobs that nobody wants to do.
Yes.
Right? And you can think of 1,000 of them. I can think of 10,000 of them. But these are things that people don't want to do, but they're willing to pay someone else to do. And that's where a ton of franchisors are looking right now, is to pick up on these dirty jobs. And listen, there's anything from like crime scene cleanup to you name it, to installation. I mean, there's a million things in that category or in that lane that I absolutely love. And so people are going to spend money on their kids. They're going to spend money on their pets. They're going to spend money on their parents. And they're going to spend money getting stuff out of their house that they don't want to do and get done working around their home. That, again, these dirty jobs are great.
I think that makes a lot of sense. It makes a whole lot of sense. Now, outside of, maybe this might be a 2-part question, but outside of operational expense, right? Everybody's going to have that. I guess, is your check a one-time check, or are you tied into the franchise fee that that must be paid?
So the franchise fee is the same whether you use a consultant like me or not.
Okay.
So the franchisors are willing to pay me that fee because I hand you to them on a silver platter. They know that you're pre-qualified. They know that you're interested in their concept. They don't have to dig through hundreds of leads that are tire kickers 2:30 in the morning going, oh, I think I want a Chick-fil-A. You know what I mean? It's they know that my candidates are the strongest candidates and will be potentially the best franchisees they have. We have placed numerous franchisees of the year, top performing franchises, because the fit is the huge thing here, right? If you went off and did this on your own and bought a franchise and you wound up with a golf store because you like golf, you're going to hate it. Right? Because it doesn't match the attributes of the business that you're looking for. It matches what you like to do, which is completely the wrong way to go about this. So the franchisors are willing to pay me that fee. It's the same fee whether you use me or not, and I do not get anything on the back end. Okay. It's just a one-time deal.
Let me just get a follow-up question to that. So when you're looking at the business, right, and you're going into the business, do your list of companies meet a certain criteria of maybe say margin revenue? Because obviously income is going to be whatever it's going to be. Some companies going to do $1 million, some companies going to do 10 million bucks, right? But it's really about that margin. Like all your companies kind of, I don't like to use the word guarantee, but for lack for a better word, right? I see you smiling over there. For lack for a better word, guarantee a certain maybe range of margin.
I mean, listen, nothing's guaranteed ever. Right? So I never would ever say that you're going to guarantee me making X. But the franchisors in my inventory have been looked at as if we were to become franchisees ourselves, right? So of the 250, of course, I have some favorites based on preconceived notions, which was what I tell people not to do. But there are some that I love more than others based on margin and things like that. And when you look at investing in the stock market or investing typically how people invest, all they have working for them is their money, right? So their return X, the average stock market return over 10 years is X, right? If you invest in a business like a franchise, it should be, well, it's your money and your expertise and your time and your passion and your motivation and everything else. So that return should be X plus Y, right? So what that is obviously is different with each category that we look at and each franchise that we look at. But my rule of thumb is that no one should do anything like this unless they are willing to put the time and effort into it that makes that why worth more, right? And so you can run a business and then eventually grow it and scale it where you have people in place to take more time off and to do the things you want because you worked your butt off to get it there. By the time we were into our deal, I don't know, 3 or 4 years into it, and it was cranking out the money that we were hoping for, and I had a great team in place that I empowered every day, that business allowed us to leave. I could have left for 3 months and no one would know I
Oh,
was
that's
gone.
awesome.
Okay.
That's
And
awesome.
so, but I took my team, I empowered them to run the show. In that in-home business, I never walked into one house to do an assessment, not one. I had my team set up and we paid them handsomely, way more than the industry average because it was worth it to us to never get an after hours phone call ever. And that was a 24/7, 3 shift a day business,
Interesting.
365 days a year, right? So if you scale something properly, not only will it give you the freedom to do those kind of things, when we were ready to exit, my attorney dropped a buyer in our lap, but I got a higher multiple than I would have gotten if it was me running the business every day.
Yes.
Because those buyers knew that if I exited, they would have to find a way to replace all the stuff that I did instead of just coming in and then having that management team in place already that has been scaled up and with the expectations already set that you really shouldn't call the new guy more either. You know what I mean? So that's the way I would play it, and that's the way we did play it. So, and it worked out extremely well for us.
I love your experience because you've been kind of on all sides. So you get to see the whole process. So you know the ins and outs versus just, on the side of like the transaction. What I'm really curious about is, let's just say I'm the hypothetical buyer. And I like the idea of buying an existing business, making it better, and then exiting in X amount of years, and then repeating that process. Um, how do you, is there certain industries that have different multipliers, or is it all relatively the same, or is it based on like a certain, like gross revenues or net revenues? Like, how do you, like, let's say somebody's as like a newbie, how do you determine when is the right time to sell as a multiplier, and or like what sort of more multipliers you should be looking at? Or is that too many things?
No, it's not too many
Yeah.
things. It's
Okay.
perfect. So it's a great question. And when you look at resales, there's a few reasons for a resale. Either it's on the way up right? Which is a great way to go into something. It's at the top of its market, which is, I don't know if I would do that because who knows how much more growth it has,
Right.
or something catastrophic happened to the owner and it's a fire sale, right? Or something horrible happened to the business and it's a fire sale. So the thing with franchising is if there is a great resale, and I have a perfect example of this with a buddy of mine that actually just did this. If you have a franchise and you're selling it and your franchisee neighbor in the same concept knows it, they're going to snap it up before it even hits the market. And that's exactly what happened to a buddy of mine. He owned an in-home, same concept that I did, in-home care in Chicago. He moved to Sarasota, and so did I. As you can
Nice
see,
place to live, man.
it's rocking. We love it here. And so he sold his Chicago franchises to the Chicago franchisee that wanted it because his was the only territory that she didn't own.
Oh,
So she
okay.
was sitting there waiting for him to sell it.
Couldn't wait.
So it was the best exit you could ever have. It was the easiest deal he ever did, right? Then he moves down to Sarasota and there's a corporate location for that franchise, the same exact franchise that he just bought. Now, so he just transferred from Chicago to Sarasota, has the same business, but he sold his old one, has a new one, and he's going to build it and sell it again. So we have franchisees that and candidates that we work with that treat it the same as real estate. They buy and flip over and over and over. And so that's certainly one way to go about it. I would say that the multiples depend on the category, right? So usually it's a multiple of net earnings. So what you do is you look at, instead of saying, or it's a one-time gross sales kind of number, right? But if you look at the multiples of earnings, you can't just say, oh, well, it's, the cost of goods minus this or that, the other thing. You have to add all of the add backs that franchisee or that owner has been taking advantage of. They have cars that they're running through the business. They've got vacations that they go on and tell people that tell the IRS that they're going on a business trip. I mean, there's a
It is a
million
business trip.
of
Come on.
course it's a business trip. There's a million things that happen that are written off or added back into that business that the franchisee is taking advantage of that get added on top.
Yeah.
And that's the total discretionary income of the franchisee that number should be based on.
What's that called?
And
EDABA or something like that? What's it called?
yeah, I mean, yes, but you take that and you can add the add backs on top of it even. So there's discretionary earnings depends on who you're talking to, but yes.
That's pretty interesting. I have another question. So I wrote this one down. So I'm gonna read this one. So what common traits do you see in successful franchisees? And I'm asking that question because myself, honestly, I'm not no me, so he's listening as well. And also our audience, like we want to know what are those traits to see if we have them, because truth be told is I don't think about being a franchise owner at all. But if you start telling me these traits, oh me and now you play, oh man, we got those traits, next thing you know, we're dialing you out on your cell phone, like, all right, Mark, we're ready, but what are those traits that you see with successful with successful franchisees?
So I would say that, again, it's different for everybody, but being able to get out of bed in the morning and wanting to crush that day, right? If you are someone that wants to be told what to do all day, have regular hours, have, your a week or two of vacation a year, your 401k that they may or may not match, and just sort of have your freedom in the evenings and weekends and just unplug and grab a beer when you get home, you're not my guy or my girl. So the people who can look forward to being in business for themselves, but not by themselves, right? So you've got this back office help from the franchisor. People that can take a risk, a calculated risk, but still a risk. The success rates for regular entrepreneurship, non-franchised entrepreneurship, the success rate is about 10%, right? The success rate in franchising is 90%. So it's
Really?
complete opposite. Well, if you look at it, you've got a whole franchise home office that is there helping you succeed, right? And if you don't succeed, they don't succeed. So their marketing plans, their pro forma outlook, their call centers that they put in place, all of these things will help you succeed. They have business managers that you are assigned to. They have track record with people that were successful before you that you can call anytime, right? When these conferences and these annual conventions happen at these franchise conferences,
Mm-hmm.
you're sitting next to someone that does the exact same business that you do, the exact same way, with the exact CRM, with the exact marketing, with the exact same labor, with the everything the same. So it's such a cool vibe that I have lifelong friends from having my franchise because you all have the same outlook. You all have the same understanding of giving back to the community if that's your thing or whatever. So the ability to succeed with a franchise makes, just once you look at it closer, it makes so much sense. They are helping you succeed even if you don't think you can succeed. We placed that person that spent 75 grand and is growing her business beyond expectations. When she first started, she had no idea how to sell. And my wife my wife and I both do friend destiny together. So she placed her, and she 2-3 years after she started, went back to her and said, "Lauren, what have you learned?" And she said, "I've learned that I can sell and I can crush it. And I had no idea I could do that before." Right.
Boom.
So boom is right. I mean, she's selling.
That's
she
awesome. Good for her.
So, I'm sort of running around in circles here a little bit, but that's those, the attributes of a successful franchisee. These people want to control their own destiny. They are not afraid to get out of bed in the morning. They have grit. They have the ability to, when they're knocked down, get back up, brush themselves off, and go to do it all over again and learn from their mistakes. And not get all teary-eyed and staying in bed in the morning because something bad happened the day before.
Okay. All right.
That's not who we're looking for. We're looking for people who, I guess I can say this. We're looking for ballers. We need people to
man.
get up and get it done.
Okay.
I like that. To your point, yeah, I think that it requires a certain resilience to run any sort of business. There's things are going to go wrong. You just got to get that, just a part of running any business. Lenny and I both, we do different, niches and real estate, and something's going to go wrong. It's just part of the business.
Yeah.
I had a question, like on the financing side, because I think that's maybe where I have no knowledge of, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of people in my position. What does that look like in terms of like qualifying for financing for businesses? What percent down typically do you have to have? What sort of liquidity or reserves? What's just like a typical, like, I'm buying $1 million business or some, $2 million business. Like, what does that look like?
Sure. So people will always need the franchise fee in cash, and those franchise fees range anywhere from $30,000 to $75,000, say, right? Unless you're
Okay.
doing multiple territories, it can go up from there. That's a whole nother conversation. But typically, what you're looking at for a total investment, you're looking probably 20 to 30% down. So if, again, it's rare that you would wind up even in $1 million range, right, for the franchises that I represent. So let's call it 300
Yeah.
investment.
300 what?
Yeah, 300,000 to
Okay.
All
400,000
in?
all in.
Yeah.
Okay.
That will put you in a retail storefront, all-in deal. With service-based concepts, I could get you in for 150 or under, all in. So 30% down. We help people find funding sources that we use all the time that do SBA. And the franchisors have been approved under the SBA. And then also about 70 to 75% of people actually are rolling over their 401ks. A CPA, and some of these people are cringing right now, but I can guarantee you, this is one thing I can guarantee, that being in charge of your own 401k and the earnings that have it, that play out,
Yeah.
is going to be much better than leaving it where it is. I guarantee you.
So let
We
me
did it
make sure
ourselves.
I'm grasping this. So I think this is a great question, right? That Omi just asked. So you're saying is and maybe if you could do maybe averages, because for me as well as a lot of the listeners is going to want to know, like, how much money should you have before you even start talking kind of average? We all know you got the 200 list, which is going to vary, but on average, if you say, hey, if you're sitting on or got the capability of putting together X, then we can really work on getting you a franchise of your choice.
So I always tell people to certainly have, 50,000 in cash,
Okay.
and the ability, a liquidity, let's call it a net worth of $500,000. You could do it with less, but most franchisors want to see that kind of net worth and liquidity.
Okay.
And there's variations, of course. My wife and I work with literally a billionaire who has bought 5 franchises for his family members through us. All the way to someone I'm working with right now that has a 231,000 net worth with 25,000 cash in the bank. I can make that work. We're just going to be a little limited on how many concepts fit into that investment level.
Okay.
But there's definitely ways you can roll over a 401k with no tax consequences, no pre penalties for taking that out. There are ways to do it, and there's companies that all they do all day long is do that.
Let's stay right there for a second, because man, you're really opening up opportunity for a lot of people by saying that, right? So can we just dial into that a little bit? So 401k, let's just say that a person got, I don't know, $250,000, $250,000 in their 401k, right? Now you're saying that, and let's say they don't got that much cash. Let's just say they have 10 grand, right? Liquid, right? You're saying that they can use the 50 to 60k out of their 401k investment without getting penalized on it. That means they don't have to pay any taxes on it. Get the franchise, get out of their corporate job into the new franchise. Is that what you're saying?
So typically for the 401k to be able to be tapped into, they would have already had to leave their corporate job, and it has to be moved into a different platform, right?
Okay.
So, but there are companies, and listen, this is not my lane, but there are companies that do this all day long that say that you form a C corp, you can use that money, start the 401k in that C corp, invest in that 401k. So literally there's no debt service on that money or anything. It's your money. Again, I don't have all the details because
I
it's
got
not,
you.
I'm
But
not
you're
that
saying it's
guy.
an opportunity that can be used
It
and need to be
absolutely can be
explored.
used. We see it happen every day. And there are companies that exist, and that this is all they do is tell people how to do this.
That's some good stuff right there.
This
It's
is
good
great.
stuff.
Yeah. No, this is super interesting.
People use their HELOCs too. They have home equity.
Yeah.
They can do it that way. Obviously the rates when they come down, it'll be a better opportunity to do that. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to fund it. For this guy that my daughter's best friend, he's 25 years old. We just helped him. His dad's his bank. Dad is very successful. He wanted to see his son do something. The son was going to be a golf pro. That did not happen. And so he's like, listen, I'm ready to do something. The kid's brilliant. and his dad believes in him, and his dad funded the business, and he's definitely on a repayment schedule. He will absolutely repay his dad with interest, and his dad has equity. And so, but that happens too.
Wow.
No, I think this is great. This is a lot of information, and I think there's so many possibilities, and people just are not familiar with all the different opportunities that are out there. I think it's just like the traditional stock market, real estate is a common theme, but there's so many businesses out there. And to your point, like the dirty jobs and all these things, and sometimes I talk to like some of my neighbors. I'm like, okay, you're in that business? And I'm like, I didn't even know that was a business. And they're, they're rolling in dough. So it's like, there's just tons of opportunities out there. I guess, I guess my one more question is, what are typical returns, just like at an entry level for something conservative? Like, what does that look like, for somebody who's just maybe on the conservative side? Hey, they just want to get their feet wet and get started, and just maybe on the other side of like high risk, high reward. Like, what's the typical range for just somebody just looking into like that?
So I would say that, again, no guarantees.
Yeah, for sure.
Disclaimer number one.
Yeah.
I would say that I wouldn't do anything for less than a 15 to 20% return if you're putting your time and energy into something. There are franchises that have a 30 to 40% net.
Mm-hmm.
But again, those are the performers that are getting out of bed every morning and crushing it, right?
Yeah.
So that would be typically the range. It depends on who the person is, how they're conducting themselves, how great they are at finances and keeping things tight and not wasting money on stupid stuff.
Like Post-its.
Right, exactly.
Gotta be a Harvard guy, gotta be conservative.
Yeah, he netted much more than everyone else in that group.
Just bad.
But that's the range. Again, I personally, I wouldn't do it for less than 15-20% return if I'm busting my hump doing it every day.
And would you say that, and once again, I know that, it's up to the individual, but would you say that, and maybe you can give a percentage wise, are there if you can give this in percentage, how many people are much more passive versus hands-on?
I would say 5 to 10% would be more passive.
Okay.
So when I have someone in a corporate position that they would never leave in a million years, and my whole entire pitch is, let me help you diversify your portfolio income, right, through franchise ownership, those people have to then hire a manager or a GM to run their business for them. So they're going to still grow equity in that business and grow that business, but their net return personally isn't going to be as high as if they did it themselves, because they have to pay someone to do it. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of concepts that are semi-absentee, right? And that's what I would say. You put someone in place, you scale it like that from the get-go, understanding that you have to have the money set aside to pay that person, and you're not getting paid. So it's a slower ramp up. You're still getting equity in that business. So on the flip, you're going to get a nice pop at the end, but along the way, you're going to make less because you're not in it. It just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So would be my answer to that question.
Okay.
No, that's great. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do another episode with you to kind of like deep dive a little bit more. I think this was a great like high level overview. So maybe if you could share, like, what does Find Your Freedom mean to you?
Find My Freedom means to me the ability to have the freedom to go and do what you want to do for fun anytime you want to do it. And we've been fortunate in my family that we've built enough businesses to allow us to do that. We're boaters, which is why we moved down to Sarasota. We sold our boat in up north because Lake Michigan boating is totally different than the Gulf of Florida boating. But these are things that I don't want to have to ask a boss for my time off. I don't want to have to worry about when I'm having lunch. I don't want to have to worry about going to all. I never missed one of my kids' events ever. And they're 25 and 20 now. And they can absolutely look at me and say, Dad, you were always there, period. I'm always there when my wife needs something. I'm always there when my friends need something. And I never have to worry about my schedule ever. So find my freedom. That's what it means to me.
That's great, man. And that's really what it's all about, I think. So, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to listen to this episode and have a ton of questions, and I'm sure going to want to work with you as well. So with that being said, how can they find you?
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that and look forward to it. We set up a landing page for this. It's frandestiny.com/freedom. So frandestiny.com/freedom. And there's a bunch of additional information on that page. You can click through and find great stuff. And there's also obviously a form fill. If you want to talk to us, you just fill that out and we'll get right back to you.
That's great, man. That's great. So we're coming to the end of the show. Just like Omid said, we would love to have you back. So you have to come on live and tell us, yes, you'll be back. Let's hear it.
Absolutely. Live.
Right, perfect,
I will be
perfect,
back.
perfect. All right. So at the end of the show, what we like to do is this big boom session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count to 3, 1, 2, 3, and all 3 of us in a uniform manner are going to say boom and hold it as long as we can. All right. Y'all guys ready?
Yep.
All right, listeners, this is the time that you turn your speakers down. All right. So 1, 2, 3, boom. Awesome, 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 awesome. Check this out. We just had Mark here come on, which is totally different and teach us about franchising. I mean, we learned so much. And one of the key things that came up, because we all know that money is one of the main reasons that stop us from moving forward, as well as education. Well, you just got educated 2 times here, just learning about franchises. Then 2, if you have some money sitting in that 401k, that might be your starter, to sit here and start this business. And that's just one avenue. But I tell you to reach out to Mark because he's really knowledgeable. He came on as a guest to us. Thank you for his time, and we really appreciate it. Now, for us to bring on more guests like Mark, we need you to sit here and leave us an honest 5-star review. And we also need you to share this. So share this with your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle. Share it with all your coworkers, the ones that you like and the ones that you don't like. Until the next episode of Find Your Freedom, we talk to you soon. Peace.
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 Thanks for listening to Find Your Freedom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, please help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review and sharing the podcast with friends, family, and colleagues. Until next time, get out there and find your freedom.